welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day, and I had to come on and do this one. Now, I know some of you will go, oh no, stop talking about him, he's left the football club. But I have kind of dashed this up a little bit with a little bit about Big Nick and a little bit about the Big KNACK. That's right. A little bit about our current striker and our former striker, who isn't just having a mare at Liverpool, he's also fallen to pieces as well, if you believe everything that you're reading. We'll get right into this in a minute. If that's the kind of thing, guys, like, smash, subscribe, help get us to the 12K. We're really, really close, a couple of hundred away. You know, smash that button, recommend to family and friends. I'm going to have a mint prize for the 12K subscriber prize. It's definitely worth sticking around and then entering that draw, because that'll be a brilliant prize. But let's get into this. So what am I talking about today? I'm talking about how class Big Nick is, right? Big Nick, I'm going to talk about him first, get this done and dusted, and then I'll talk about he who shan't be named, or he who shan't be played at the minute, which is even funnier. But I'll get into Big Nick in a minute. Big Nick Woltemade has been absolutely fucking brilliant for us since we signed him. 69 million quid we signed this kid for. Crying Munich are bitching about it because they couldn't get the lad. He's class. He's absolutely brilliant. He's looking sharper every single game. He's got 5 goals in 5 games. You know, he scored all types of goals, headers, little cheeky back heels. I mean, he's brilliant. He links at the play really well. He's 23 years old, scored for his country now as well. You know, he's German's main striker. And for 69 million quid for a kid who pretty much everybody slept on, Newcastle look like they've had an absolute blinder with this. I saw a brilliant video on the Premier League YouTube channel about Big Nick Woltemade by, I think it was James Alcott. Absolutely class. Go and watch that. Brilliant video, breaks it down perfectly, superbly. This kid's got a better strike rate right now than Erling Haaland in terms of his accuracy. So we couldn't be happy as Newcastle fans about Big Nick. And not only is he such a good footballer as well, he seems like a lovely kid as well. I always felt with Isak that he'd come across as a bit of a cock. Now, no strikers are like that way anyway. They're quite arrogant. They're a bit full of himself. But he always come across as a bit of an arrogant twat, that Alexander Isak. I don't know whether he's just eccentric or he's a bit shy, you know, when he's off the pitch or whatever. But you see Big Nick Woltemade, he's this big, smiley German. You know, he looks like, you know, somebody who's here to fix the fridge in the 80s, you know, but he seems like an absolute class lad. The players seem to love him already. The fans love him. You know, he's smiling. He's whipping the fans up. He's cheering the fans. You know, he's only played a handful of games. He's already captured the hearts of Newcastle United fans. And I think there's only more and more to come from this kid. Now, he has slipped in perfectly to the shoes that Alexander Isak ran away from and basically tossed in the bin, so they didn't want them anymore. And that's what I'm going to get into in a second, because this kid is basically the architect of his own downfall, in my opinion, as is the team that he signed for, which I'm going to get into in a second. But what I love about Nick Woltemade, he's just took this all in his stride. It's a massive challenge to go and play for Newcastle United, even though Onslaught called us a smaller club than Liverpool, which technically we are in terms of trophy touts, but he didn't need to do that, Onslaught. That's the pressure showing on your egghead. It's cracking, my friend, and I can see yolk dribbling out your fucking forehead. But going back to Nick Woltemade, to come in and step into that role as a Newcastle United main striker, to fill the shoes of a guy who was universally discussed as the best centre forward on the planet, arguably. I still think it was always Erling Haaland. Go watch my videos. I said Erling Haaland and Mbappe are ahead of Isak. I always said that, and I still stand by that. Even if Isak went to Liverpool and he was brilliant like he's been for Newcastle, I would have still said the same thing. But for Nick Woltemade to come to a brand new country, a brand new league, which is much quicker paced than the Bundesliga, and to settle in the way he settled in, some of the touches, some of the movements, Berbatov-esque. He's played Champions League, he's played Premier League, he's played ugly games, he's played against big teams, and he's always wants the ball. He always stands out, and he always does something to impact the game, and I absolutely adore the lad. And I think for 69 million quid, and we sold this kid for 125 million, and possibly we sold a kid with some injury problems, which I'm going to get into in a second. It's an amazing deal from Newcastle United. It could even be the deal of the century if this story about Alexander Isak is true. Now, every single game Alexander Isak has played for Liverpool, he's been absolutely shit, really, in all fairness. He's not impacted the game at all. I'm just going to have a little look at his stats. I'll try and do this without my glasses on. This will be fun, guys, won't it? But for all you guys who wear glasses these days, like me, when I normally read things on the screen like I'm trying to do right now, let's have a little look at here. I'll see what we got. Right, so Alexander Isak has played 8 games in total for Liverpool. I think we're an average SOFA score rate of about 6.3 or something. He's got 1 goal and 1 assist, which was questionable as well. 1 goal in the EFL Cup against Southampton that I probably could have scored, in all fairness. He looks completely and utterly out of his depth. Not only has he let his club down, he's letting his country down as well, because he's nowhere near fit. And now it looks like he's got a groin problem and he could possibly be out injured for Liverpool. Now, Arne Slot has been asked about this several times, about, is it to do with the preseason and everything else? And he very much sounds like he's trying to put the onus and the blame on Newcastle United. And I want to put the record straight on that one. That's absolute fucking horseshit, right? The only person who fucked Alexander Isak's season is Alexander Isak, because he threw his toys out the pram. He refused to go on a pre-season tour with his club, get match fit, with a manager who's got a track record for not just getting players fit, but getting them super fit. And he didn't do that. He didn't leave on good terms. He could have left on good terms. He could have went to the pre-season tour. He could have played minutes in Korea. He could have played the first game of the season against Villa, possibly scored as the winner. And then he could have not played against Liverpool. We could have said he had a tight hamstring or whatever. And then he could have made his move to Liverpool, left on great terms. Newcastle fans wouldn't have thought he was the biggest shithouse in the century, arguably the biggest shithouse than Michael Owen. And everything would have been absolutely fine. But he didn't do any of that at all. What he did, and I still think to this day, somebody in Liverpool got in the ear of his horrible, fat, cretinous agent and told Alexander Isak, force a move because Newcastle aren't playing ball. And that's the reason why he went on strike. He went across to Spain. Did you see the clips of him training in Spain? Fuck me. If I ran to the co-op, I'd put more energy in than this shithouse did in his one-to-one training in Spain. He was doing fuck all. He was doing nothing. And that's exactly why he's knackered right now, because he plays in the most competitive, fastest league in the world, and he's playing Champions League football, and he's also playing for a team with much higher expectations than the team that he just left, with higher quality players at all positions, not to mention the kid they signed before you came, which looked like the kid that we were supposed to be signing to replace Alexander Isak. And he started the season like a house on fire. Do you know why? Because he had a fucking preseason and he kept himself fit. And he didn't go on strike like you little Weasley shithouse. And that's why Ekatike looks sharp as a Mach 3 razor on Christmas Day. And you look like a fucking pub team player, mate. And that's exactly why he's in the state that he's in. It's not anything to do with Newcastle United. It's to do with Alexander Isak and his agent, and possibly the shithouse in Liverpool who got in the ear and told him to go on strike. That's the reason why this kid is falling to pieces. But is there a deeper lying issue with Alexander Isak? Now, this has all come out in the wash. Now, this is from Joel Bland on Twitter, which Mark will pull up, or X as it is now. I always call it Twitter. I don't give a fuck. It's the same shit, innit? Just wrapped in a different wrapper. So Joel Bland has put this out on social media. Whether it's true or not, it's worth talking about, and let's talk about it. So Joel Bland is saying he understands that according to a source previously connected to NUFC, Isak had a concerning long-term problem with his groin, something about muscles not attaching to the pelvis area. And I do remember hearing this about his groin issue a couple of times. Go back and watch already Howe videos when he was out. I think the groin was the issue. And it says there were worries internally that he'd struggle to play well past 30. Wow. Now, stop that for a minute and forget how much I dislike this bloke and the disrespect he showed Newcastle. I'm going to try and talk about this as an impartial football content creator. Players who play with pace, like Alexander Isak, are always subject to injuries. They really, really are. Look at Michael Owen back in the day. Forget what I think about him in his Newcastle time. Unbelievable player when he burst the scene at Liverpool. Rapid, pace, and they played him into the ground from 17 to 23 or something like that, or 22, whatever he was, and he was just bursting. And his hamstrings turned into cheese, and that's what happens with fast players. And this could be the same thing with Alexander Isak. Those bursts, those jink and runs in and out, he could have just aggravated something. I've had a hip impingement before. Once you have a problem like that, it's very, very difficult to get over it. You have to have physio, you have to stretch, you have to have an intense plan to get rid of that. And I'm sure Newcastle had that plan in place to give Isak those minutes when James Bunn's come in, probably manage his performance, stop him sprinting. If you go back and look at last season, he very much stayed high and central and didn't really move. It's quite funny. I think I was in a chat group and I said, I think they talked about Alexander Isak working, and somebody laughed and went, Alexander Isak work, as in he's a lazy bastard. But I think that's the reason he was able to play so many games last season for Newcastle, because he limited his movement and maybe limited the injury on this groin, which is why he played so much. And let's get it right. Jacob Murphy catered for this bloke most of the season last season. He put it on a plate for Alexander Isak. I'm not going to say he's shit. I'm not going to go back and say that now. I don't want to be a hypocrite, because he was excellent for Newcastle last season in terms of his deadly finishing. But this is a major issue for Liverpool right now, because what this is, if this is true, then this means Liverpool are fucked in terms of a sell-on value, because if this is a deep lying issue that they haven't scanned and checked for in the medical, and they've dropped 125 million quid on this bloke, then that's entirely on them. That is, you can't go and blame Newcastle United for this. If you wanted to sign a player, he's gone on strike, you've kind of got in his ear and insinuated maybe forcing a move will do the job, and it did do the job. You've signed him with no preseason, with absolutely no sharpness, no fitness. You've allowed him to go and play for Sweden. Onslaught even said that. They told Jon Dahl Tomasson he was okay for 2 games. I'd have said, fuck off. I'd have said, you got Gyökeres, you got Langer, you don't need him. Fuck off. He's not playing. He's staying here and he's getting fit. That's what I would have said if I was Liverpool manager. So they've only got themselves to blame. You can't turn around and start blaming Newcastle United right now, but it's going to be really interesting to see if this is actually true, reading through that there. So he also goes on to say, Joe, that he was informed in the summer amid the transfer saga. He was very hesitant to post anything. However, he feels it's fair to release it now. So fair play to Joe Bland if he's got the exclusive on that. That is a bombshell of a news announcement about Alexander Isak's fitness. It really, really is. It remains to be seen how much he's going to be out injured for Liverpool if this is a problem. But you can't sit there and blame Newcastle United for this guy's physical condition. Fuck no. It was up to him, and he took the wrong decision. He didn't just disrespect Newcastle. He actually disrespected Liverpool as well, because they're willing to outlay that level of capital on this kid. He owed them the right to go there fit and sharp as he could be, and he didn't do that. He went there way, way below par. So I think Liverpool fans should be pissed off with his prick as well. And speaking of Liverpool fans, I need to cover this as well, because the media seems to be wanting to make excuses for Alexander Isak. Things like this with Onslaught. Fair play to the likes of Wayne Rooney. He called him out. He said he wouldn't play him. He's nowhere near sharp. I wouldn't play him. I'd play at KNACK all day long. Isak would be riding the pine until he gets his shit together. But I was watching Jamie Carragher on Sky Sports, and sometimes Carragher's fine on Sky Sports. Sometimes there's no problem there. But sometimes he talks absolute bullshit. And I'm going to call him for the bullshit that he turned out and said the other night. He was talking about Isak and KNACK, right? And that Slot has to get them both in the same team. And then he turned around and said the most ridiculous thing I've heard a pundit say in a long time is that it's not good for Alexander Isak to turn around on the bench and see Hugo Ekitike sitting there because he's thinking, oh shit, if I don't perform, he's taking my space. Hang on a minute. Whoa. Hang on a minute, right? This is the guy that you called the best centre forward on the planet. This is the guy that your club dropped 125 million quid for. This is the guy who thought he was that fucking good that he could tell Newcastle to do this and go and play for Liverpool, bang, with no training, no preseason, and be absolutely fine, right? You're telling me this guy's scared of somebody who's good on the bench? Fuck right off. Players of that level and that quality should use that as fuel to compete. Look at Newcastle United. In terms of the wingers, Jacob Murphy, Elanga, those kind of players, they're going to raise their game because they want to keep the starting berth. Alexander Isak should see Ekitike as somebody to make him better, and so should Ekitike see the same thing with Alexander Isak. You can't just toss your toys out the pram because you think, oh, well, this guy's really good. Oh, he might take me place. I mean, that's the most weak-minded thing I've ever heard in my life. And if that's the kind of player you've signed Liverpool, I wouldn't have spent 125 pence on him, let alone 125 million quid. There's no way that I'm buying that from Carragher. That's absolute manure, that. It really, really is. It's a lazy, lazy opinion. And it's just making excuses for Alexander Isak's absolute shit start to a Liverpool career. But as I say, in terms of Newcastle United, we are absolutely buzzing. We've got Big Nick Woltemade. He's getting better and better every single game that passes. We've still got Wissa to come back, which is going to be in a couple of weeks' time. That gives us another dynamic in attack as well. If Wissa can hit the ground running, I don't think he should go to AFCON. I really, really don't. I'm going to get into that nearer the time. I want to see the decision. I want to see what Wissa does when it gets to AFCON. I really, really hope he makes the right decision. There's a World Cup qualifier for DR Congo. They'll go to the World Cup. AFCON is every year, every 2 years potentially. He'll play another AFCON. He'll play another 2 AFCONs because DR Congo don't really have a plethora of strikers coming to take Wissa's place, do they? He owes Newcastle United for being so patient with him, dropping the money on him. He had his own saga as well. I didn't agree with the shit he pulled before any e-scousers gave me shit in the comments. So he owes Newcastle United to stay, I think, and play and fuck the AFCON off. I understand it's his country. I understand the argument for that. But he's got to look at the optics of the situation and he's got to say, do you know what? I can't do this one to the manager. You're going to put me in a really bad position here. And I generally think you will do that. But I'll do a proper video on that near the time when I know what Wissa is going to do. But in terms of Newcastle, we have come out of this deal so far as an absolute blinder. We really, really have. To sign Nick Woltemade for 69 million quid, which we were mocked for signing him for that much money, For him to come in and be so good and do so well, link up the play really well. He's not the same player as Isak, doesn't play the same way as Isak. We need to get used to that as well. That's probably how we've lost a little bit of effectiveness from last season. However, I think in the long run, Nick Woltemade will be much better for Newcastle than Alexander Isak was. That's a big statement. You can clip me up. I generally think he will be, because as an overall footballer, he's a better player. And you know what? He's a better fucking person as well, because I don't think he would have done the same shit that Alexander Isak did to us. I generally don't think he would do that. He seems like he's just got made of more solid material than Alexander Isak was. I was massively disappointed at the way that shithouse acted in the summer. And you know what? You reap what you fucking sow, mate. And that's why you're falling to pieces. That's why you can't play for the club that dished out 125 million quid for you. And if you're not playing by Christmas, some of these scousers who lauded your arrival, they'll start to question whether they've spunked ridiculous money on another Newcastle flop like Andy Carroll. Love you, Big Andy, but Liverpool did not go very well for you. So that's really interesting shit from me. A little bit of a both there, guys. Hopefully that hasn't wound up you people who don't like talking about Isak. A bit of Nick. I love Nick. The Big Nick energy reigns supreme. And then this tit is knackered. And you know what? I don't give a fuck. It's his own fault. He brought it on himself. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think about Nick Woltemade's start. Has he surprised you? Has he impressed you? You know, do you think he's going to get better? Do you think he's going to go up even more levels than I think he is? Are you excited about Whistler coming back? And what do you think about this news, this exclusive that Joe Bland has just dropped out there? Do you think there's truth in that? Do you think Newcastle knew that Isak's groin was a ticking time bomb? And if they did, wow, is this the deal of the century? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Keep it ever more. Thanks for watching. Have a belter. Even you, Scousers, have a belter. We'll see you later. Bye, la. All the best. Cheers.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.